You're listening to another great podcast in the MyMac Podcasting Network.
It's time for the GeeksPub. I'm Tim Robertson, joined by David Cohen. Hello, David.
Hello.
So we've got kind of a loaded show here. We've got the second to last season 1 bracket, our comic book movie fight thing, if you will. We've got 4 movies left.
The nitty gritty.
Yeah, so we've got Captain America: The Winter Soldier against Batman 1989, and then X-Men 2000 against Venom 2018. Whoever wins these will face each other in the next episode to crown our season 1 champion, and then we do it again. But beyond that, though, we've got kind of some geeky stuff to talk about, including, let's start right here. This was posted 3 weeks ago, so things change so fast, who knows. But at the time that this was posted, and I haven't heard anything contradictory yet, that basically Marvel is sticking with the Kang storyline for this go-round of, Marvel movies. And they're just going to recast Jonathan Major because, as we know, his ass is going to jail.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about this. Kang the Conqueror has always been a very strange villain in Marvel Comics. There's been so many different variations of Kang because he's a time traveler that it's even someone who read comics religiously like I did was confused by the character because it wasn't the same character, it seemed, every time. And some of it was just lazy writing. In fact, most of it was just lazy writing, to be honest. But Kane himself was never, to me, very threatening. I was never like, oh, crap, it's Kang, I was always like, oh, they'll beat him again, because they always do. He didn't have that menacing presence that a Doctor Doom or, a Thanos has.
That's always the flaw in these super powerful supervillains, is that despite the fact that they're supervillains, they get defeated time and time again. And some of this article kind of talks about this in that they say, Kang is like you say, never comes across as particularly threatening, and in Quantumania, weedy little Ant-Man kicked his butt.
Well, no, Ant-Man didn't. Ants did. Ants. He lost to ants.
Yeah, but he was controlled. The ants were controlled by Ant-Man. I think we can give Ant-Man the win on that one.
I think Ant-Man just
was the ants
asked them to do it. I don't think he actually controls the ants.
I know, but nevertheless, they had a fight. All right, Ant-Man wasn't doing particularly well, but he beat him in the end. And a win is a win. You got to take a win. There was many problems with Quantumania. I actually thought Jonathan Major's performance as Kang was probably one of the better parts of that movie.
Oh, I agree. I just think they ended it wrong.
Yeah, but you're right in that if you look at the wider appearances of this character, we've had him as He Who Remains Loki.
Another great character.
Another great character, and then a variant of him as well. And yet, every time the approach they've taken to him is to make him interesting, but not particularly threatening. There were moments when you saw how frightening he could be in Quantumania, and you could tell he was definitely an evil, bad dude. But whether he was big enough to hang a whole arc of movies on to my mind, has always been a question mark. Throw in that Marvel's inability to deliver consistently over the last few years, and I think it's a big question mark. You're absolutely right that having lost the actor who's kind of been building this thing up, and one of the things they're trying to do with Kang is trying to say, well, they're all the same person but different, which it's fine, and they could argue perhaps that we have not seen the most threatening versions of Kang so far. And it's building up. Each one is worse and worse until you see the really terrible guys. Maybe that was the approach they were going to take. But what really undercuts that is if you have to recast the actor, because all the people who don't really follow the comics and maybe even don't follow the movies are going to turn up to the next movie and they're going to go, who the hell is this guy? Because they're going to think, I haven't seen him before. And then they're going to hear the name and they're going to think, oh, was he different before? It's that whole multiverse problem again, writ large.
Yep.
And
I think they should just
Couple.
retire King at this point. I think
Yeah,
they told
yeah,
they had two seasons of Loki about King, although he kind of took a back seat in the second season. Kind of, but I mean, he was there, but it was more focused on Loki, less fighting the big bad. And then in Quantumania, he loses. So let's just move on. And quite honestly, I know that the whole building up to Thanos thing was, important for Marvel. And, the culmination of that was amazing. 2 movies that were just phenomenal, made, $3 billion between the two. But you don't have to build up to some great big thing. How about you just make some good movies instead?
In some respects, you could argue that having done that once with Thanos, it's a mistake to doing it again.
I would agree. I would make that argument.
Strike twice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not saying that you can't have a big bad. You just don't need to. You got to have the right big bad, and King was never the right big bad. Even when they first announced it, the King Dynasty and all that, I was like, yeah, because he's just not scary enough.
I think the problem actually is having a big bad. I think that it makes these movies formulaic because the third act is always to fight the big bad and find a way to defeat him. So you lose some of the running time on the story to effectively a special effects fest at the end, and they all kind of look the same. So it would be interesting to start seeing Marvel movies where you don't have necessarily a big bad. Maybe the big bad is the environment, a catastrophe, something they have to deal with, something they have to endure, rather than necessarily something they have to punch in the face.
Or they lose at the end.
Yeah, and we've seen that done. I mean, Empire was kind of like that. The Empire Strikes Back kind of had that vibe to it, where it was like an unstoppable force, and they were doing their best to fight against it, and they didn't really do so well.
But the problem with that analogy, though, is that it was building up to the big fight at the end of the next movie.
Yeah, but I think there is something to be said about doing a 2-movie arc as opposed to an 8-movie arc that actually makes the storytelling give you opportunities to do something different.
Well, I just listened to the History of the Marvel Universe, a book that came out just a few months ago, and they almost completely up to date. It was released before Echo and season 2 of Loki, but it was pretty much up to date. And one of the reoccurring problems that I would hear that some of the directors and writers had was trying to shoehorn the Marvel Universe stuff into their movie, i.e., something like Thor, for instance, in Age of Ultron, when he goes off to the cave and all that. That was a much longer scene and explained more, because what they left in the movie was kind of stupid. It didn't make any sense at all. It didn't connect to anything.
Yeah, it didn't.
And there was never a payoff.
Down, and it never went anywhere because it was not directly linked, apparently, to what actually happened in the movies later on.
Yes, and then so Wheaton did that movie, which of course we're not supposed to talk about Wheaton because of the stuff that he did. He was such a jerk off, but regardless. Age of Ultron is a better movie than I think most people remember. One of the scenes that he fought for, and it was still cut down, but he really fought for it because he thought it was important, in my mind, is the best part of the movie, and that's the whole farmhouse stuff. When they go to Hawkeye's house and you meet his family. And it really... These guys are in costume and they're coming into this, environment that they look kind of silly in, but you completely buy it at this point. You're in. Marvel wanted to cut that out so they could set more stuff up in the future for the Infinity stuff. And Wheaton fought for it. I agree with Wheaton. It's the best part of the movie. And that's what Marvel needs to focus on. Less of these universe building stuff and more of the actual characters. I know that at least the rumors are Sony and Marvel are kind of in disagreement. Sony wants Spider-Man to continue the whole multiverse thing, because they want to bring in, the characters that they control, and they want to further their story, which is a colossal failure, worse than anything Marvel's doing. Marvel wants to take Spider-Man back to the streets. a more grounded street level movie, and I think that's the way to go with Spider-Man.
Oh, absolutely, because he's for a start he's done the universe-ending stuff now.
Mm-hmm.
He's done it before, right?
We've seen him in space. We've seen him in a different. I mean, leave him street level.
And specifically, the last movie kind of reset everything. I mean, it will kind of undermine the entire last movie. After having the entire world forget who even Peter Parker is.
Yep.
Yeah. For him to suddenly go back to being the Spider-Man he was before.
Right. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense, and also it doesn't do the character in the MCU many favors.
100%.
Really, the whole point of the Spider-Man arc is this is a kid, and he's learning every time he goes into bat. And he's changing, he's making mistakes, and he's learning from those mistakes. And really, yes, this is the opportunity. I mean, we never got to see him as the street-level Spider-Man in the MCU because Tony Stark met up with him. That was the first time we saw him.
Yeah, and he immediately goes to Germany and...
Yeah, goes in Germany, gave him gadgets and everything. And it was, don't get me wrong, it was extremely exciting and refreshing the way he was played.
Oh, sure, 100%.
In that scene.
In every movie he's been in, he was great. And they use him 100% right. But that includes the end of the last movie when they reset the character and brings him back street level, which is where Peter Parker belongs. And
also, as well, I think we could afford to see a time gap between the end of the last movie and the next movie.
Yeah,
Tom Holland's getting old now.
Yes.
It's not going to be sustainable for much longer for him to play a teenager.
Yeah, I don't think he's a teenager in school in the next movie. He can't be.
They need to have a break and have him effectively do his stuff at the street level.
Yep.
And hone him into the Spider-Man we remember from the comics.
Yep. Or even the Spider-Man that we remember from, the first trilogy, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, that would... Yeah, so the idea of...
Just the idea of it, not continuation or anything.
I mean, Tom Holland is 27 now.
Yeah.
Right? So by the time the next Spider-Man movie comes out, he's going to be 30.
Yeah.
Yeah? And really, that is going to start pushing credibility.
Yeah.
In terms of... In terms of him...
Yeah, in the next movie, he's got the crappy apartment. He's got a job. He's single. There's a street-level baddie that he has to contend with. Yeah. Who much like he kind of did in the first movie towards the end when he lost his suit and everything is, he's got to rely on his wits and his courage and his acumen and that sort of thing, but not rely on all the magic AI suits and the special weapons that come out of nowhere every time. It's got to be. Well, you know what? For me, the perfect illustration of that would be the kind of Spider-Man we saw in the video games. Where yes, he had technology and he had skills and all that, but he was seasoned, and he wasn't intimidated by facing up against Wilson Fisk or some of these other big bad guys. But they were big threats. They weren't, they weren't just simple. Oh, it's one person, you take him down. They had armies and they had machinations, and he didn't know what was going on and all of that. That's the sort of movie I want to see. Because it was exciting. I think the next Spider-Man movie, if they kept it street level, where the big bad is built up, we kind of got the start of it in Echo, but in the next Daredevil series too, where it's Kingpin, because he's the perfect villain for Spider-Man and Daredevil. Yeah, I think that would be great.
Because the good thing about Kingpin is he's not really the sort of villain you can just punch out. Yeah, no. Because he's far more complicated than that, and his schemes go on almost without him half the time.
Well, if Spider-Man... Here's the idea. Spider-Man... Fisk becomes mayor in Daredevil, and he passes legislation that outlaws costume vigilantes.
Yeah.
Because they totally should. I mean, you can't have people running around with superpowers blowing up your neighborhood all the time. And it's very easy to get the public behind the idea of, hey, these guys need to be under control. That's what Civil War initially, by the way, is about. Yeah. The whole accords and all that. You just revisit that idea, but at a city level. We have to have, if we're going to have these superpower people running around, we got to have some kind of regulations. There's got to be control here. And that's the environment that the new Spider-Man movie falls into. So how do you just go punch out the mayor? That doesn't change anything.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, doesn't really help your argument.
No, in fact, it would do the opposite.
Yeah.
If they do go attack him, they're playing right into the Kingpin's hand in public perception. So that's the movie you make.
Well, this was the whole business with the first Daredevil season, where effectively he couldn't go straight on to Kingpin. He had to expose him for what he was,
exactly,
to get people to turn against him before he could go. Then he went and punched him as well. But
he was only a businessman then, so it's easy for the public to turn against a bad business guy.
Yeah.
It's a whole lot harder to turn someone against a politician. I mean, in the real world, we've got a politician that just got done saying, "Oh, Russia should attack any of the allied NATO forces if they're not paying their bills." I mean, I don't know how that person doesn't immediately get arrested and ostracized, but there's still a large group of people that's like, yeah. I mean,
absolutely.
You just show that kind of insanity in the movie, and that's why Spider-Man or Daredevil or Electro or whoever can't just go after the Kingpin.
So that's Spider-Man, but I mean, I think you and I would both agree it would be better if they did that for the whole MCU. If stopped making every single fight they have, world threatening, or
I agree,
or galaxy threatening, or universe threatening.
One of the best Avenger stories isn't about them saving the world; it's the Masters of Evil attacking Avengers Mansion. And there was an Avenger there, I forget which one it was, and they beat Jarvis half to death. And then the Avengers, one by one, are coming back to the mansion, and the Masters of Evil are kicking their ass. It was a great storyline.
For those who've not read the comics, this was Jarvis who was their real butler, not Jarvis the AI.
Yes.
Because obviously MCU people are going, what? How can you...
It was a great... Baron Zemo was in charge of the bad guy. It was really it really kind of... You thought, they might actually pull this off. Yeah. I think something like that would work really well. But they haven't established a group of bad guys yet that's really formidable. Can Marvel steal the Legion of Doom idea? That'd be good.
I don't know. But yeah, I mean, look, this is the problem, is that what one of the themes we're seeing is corporate interests have kind of overridden things in the MCU. You talk about what Sony want to do, and the problem you have with Sony is that if you don't work with them, then they're kind of working against you, and then you've got to undo everything they've done. If you then want to use those characters in your own things, because I'm sure at some point Marvel must be thinking, at some point we've got to get an opportunity to wrest that control back off Sony.
Oh, of course, that's high on their priority list, but it's not going to be easy to do.
No, it's not going to be easy.
All they have to have is a whole bunch more Spider-Verse movies, if you will, failing. But here's the thing. The live-action stuff that they've done, other than Venom, and I know Venom's high up on our board here, but if that was an MCU film, I think it would have been not as good. If it was set in the MCU.
Venom succeeded because everybody... we all had low expectations.
Yep.
And it exceeded those expectations.
This Madam Web movie's coming out, I think, this next week or 2 weeks from now, is going to be a massive failure. It's going to be one of the lowest rated ones. Nobody's going to go see it in the movie theaters. It's a movie that no one cares about, and the character is stupid to begin with. I know they're retooling it for the movies, but it's not going to work. The only one that even gives me a glimmer of hope, and I'm putting, by the way, the animated stuff to the side because that is brilliant. I'm putting that to the side. Kraven looks pretty good. The trailer that I saw for Kraven the Hunter actually looked like it would be fairly good. I mean, they're giving him powers, which is kind of dumb, but it looks pretty good. Yeah,
but again, it's just like Madam Web, it's a deep cut character that a lot of people won't have heard of.
No.
And I think this is part of the problem. Obviously, the MCU was built on. It started to be built on Iron Man, who at the time was a second-rate character.
Almost third-rate.
Yeah, he was not central to the Marvel Universe. It was the big ones, But I think that's part of Marvel's problem, is that their heroes are... some of their heroes are very well known, but many of their villains are not. And I think there's one thing that DC really has going for it, is that everyone knows who their villains are as well as their heroes, and their villains are almost as iconic as their heroes.
But only Batman's villains.
Well, yeah, but I would argue that many of Superman's heroes are more well known, and I think people want to.
Which ones?
Come on, the
Lex Luthor. Business guy, scary.
Well,
and they've done him to death, and he's super lame in every movie.
They have done him to death, but nevertheless, people know who he is. I think sometimes people want to come and see one of these movies where they kind of understand what's going on, and the problem with somebody you've never heard of is that the movie then has to spend some time giving you the backstory, and they often do a lousy, poorly written, very quickly rushed job, and you don't care about the villain. If you don't care about the villain, then you don't care about the battle between them, because you know the good guy's probably going to win, right?
Yeah, I think that's why Thanos was such a good villain. They built him up slowly. Infinity War was mostly about Thanos, and he wins at the end. He succeeds, and you feel the loss when when people start disappearing. It's massive when Peter Parker disappears right in Iron Man's hands. You completely buy it. You know, when he says, "I don't want to go."
Yeah,
it's powerful stuff.
Absolutely, and they. Well, we said it before. I don't think they can pull that off again, frankly, and I think they are literally spending billions of dollars on these plays.
Yeah. Well, here's our other story.
It's a lot of money to waste if you screw it up.
Yeah, here's another story. Disney CEO Bob Iger says Marvel Studio has lost focus, and Disney will lean more into sequels and franchises. But here's the funny thing. He says Marvel lost their focus, right? So they're going to do more sequels now. Except the entire slate of Marvel movies that they just got done with, that they lost their focus, were all sequels. Every one of them.
Yeah.
So, wait a minute. Do they lose their focus in their... So you're going to lean on... I'm confused. I don't get it.
Yeah. It doesn't... When he says he's losing it, we know people in the know what Iger likes and doesn't like. He hates TV.
Yep.
Right? So, when he says Marvel lost their focus, he's saying they spent too much money on TV shows.
Yep.
Right? He's not talking about the movies, and he thinks.
No, I think he is somewhat, because the movies that have come out have done dismal.
Yeah, but I suspect he's thinking if they stop doing all the TV stuff and concentrated on the movies would be better and they would be more successful.
Yeah.
I suspect that's what his argument is. I think he's thinking, the MCU, it's got cinematic in the name. It's a movie franchise. It's not a TV franchise. Cut it out, taking all our properties and actors and putting them on the TV.
Yep.
Yeah. And you do movies. And what does he say in this statement? Well, he says he's excited to see them do the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. He's basically saying anything that's successful on the TV, I want to see it in the movie screen.
Yeah.
And he doesn't care about the TV stuff. And we also know he's not a big fan of Disney Plus. He doesn't think streaming is a good idea. Yeah. So he wants to pivot the company back to doing movies and movies alone. Now, I don't know whether that's a good idea or a bad idea. I don't think it's as simple as that. I think the difficulty with Marvel generally has been some dilution of talent, but also I just think they've been accepting some really crappy decisions.
Yes.
They've also they've lost the plot on the expanding the universe. This shoehorning business is absolutely right, because back in the beginning, I mean, let's face it, the first few movies, the only world building you got was in the post-credit scenes. It wasn't in the movies themselves.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which is why they work so well.
Yeah, it didn't interfere with the movie. Yeah, but now you've got to start bringing all these characters in. They've got to interact, and you've got to write for that. And you've got people writing for characters they don't understand. You've got people who signed up to do one type of movie, and then they've been told they've got to do this other thing as well. Yeah, and of course, you've got lots of different people writing the same characters. It's no wonder that you get a lot of variance.
Yeah,
I mean, this is something I've always struggled with the US system of developing media, because here in the UK we particularly on television, we tend to have one person or a group of people, a small group of people, like a pair or something, write a whole series of something. And it won't be 24 episodes because nobody could do that, but it'll be 8 episodes or something like that. And the same writers write it all. And that, I think you get a better result that way. I think the problem is if you choose different writers with every project, and you're choosing those writers not on whether you think they can do a good job, but you're looking at the CV of the thing they did before, and whether you like that or not. Yeah, you end up with these lousy results.
Yeah,
and they've done the same with the directors.
Well, at least here in America, they finally started to, anyways, embrace the idea of the showrunner, where this person is in charge of the series. He's in charge of the writers. He's in charge of the directors. They're hired guns for a greater or lesser degree, depending on the series, to the showrunner. Look at Breaking Bad.
Yeah,
that was done because of the showrunner. They didn't put any pressure on how many episodes or how many seasons or anything like that. He had the idea, this is how long it's going to take, we're going to end it here, and the studio backed him. That person's in charge, this is the show he's making. The British system is very similar.
But
those type of things work well, but here at Marvel, they don't do that. They put the directors in charge. And
when they do, I think you could argue that James Gunn was kind of the showrunner for Guardians of the Galaxy.
He was, but because it really wasn't connected to the rest of the MCU.
Exactly, yeah.
They just let him do his own thing.
There's no reason you couldn't do that with a lot more of the Marvel characters. You could say, you know what, this guy is the Thor guy. All things Thor go through him.
Yep.
Right? And he would be in charge of Thor's journey through the MCU. Right? And if you did that with some of these big characters, and you chose quality people who could work together, you'd end up with a much more coherent thing. One of the problems we've got is that, of course, this was all imagined by Kevin Feige, but he's a really busy guy now, and I'm sure you could draw a line between how much extra things he has on his plate versus the drop in quality in the MCU generally, just because he hasn't got enough time to intervene in the right places and cause things to happen that he thinks should happen.
He's not only in charge of the MCU, but all Marvel, including the comics. Exactly. And that's too much for any one person. He should only be in charge of what you see live on the screen. And any of the TV stuff should be street-level type of heroes simply from a budgetary constraint. Daredevil doesn't need 1,000 special effects. It just doesn't.
Yep.
And it's more grounded. Now, if you want Spider-Man to show up in an episode, fine. That's okay. As long as the hero is consistent.
Yeah, and also as well, the special effects thing I think is overplayed, because I suspect a lot of the reasons we've had problems with special effects in Marvel again goes back to the writing, because these shows have been poorly conceived. They've all had to be reshot and substantially reshot, and that has put a crunch on the special effect. And
they're relying on special effects instead of practical effects to do so much of it.
There are plenty of TV shows in today's industry with the CGI power we have today, where you can do very good quality special effects.
Yeah, but see, that's the problem, David. There's only so many people who are masters at that craft that you can have working on this stuff. And if you have every single thing using special effects, you don't have enough people to do the work.
Yeah, but then it comes down to good writing and a coherent view and really good production design. So you don't have to rely on the special effects.
That's what I'm saying.
The story.
That's exactly what I was saying.
But what I'm saying is that doesn't mean you can't have big budget special effects in TV shows, because you can.
You can, but I would rather they don't.
Right.
I would rather they don't, because it's spreading the talent too thin, and TV shows a little bit more fluid when it comes to that stuff. I would say if you have a big special effect, ask yourself why it's necessary, and if it's not necessary, skip it or do it more practically. A Daredevil fight with Bullseye does not need to be special effects.
But Daredevil's a poor example, because he's not his powers don't need special effects.
Right. Spider-Man TV show is a problem, because every time Spider-Man's on screen, it has to be pretty much special effects, whether you're getting rid of, not necessarily CGI, but you do have, because special effects isn't just CGI. It is also removing wires when the customer's swinging through.
But that is basically CGI. You know, all of that. Anytime you've got a computer process the scene to do something to it, whether it's putting something in or taking something out.
Well, a lot of that is rotoscope, which is manual. But I just think that they need more focus at Marvel. They need Kevin Feige to look at the movies only. They need someone else that's going to only look at the TV stuff. And we don't need 6 seasons of different shows on Disney Plus from Marvel. 2 would be enough. 2 every year.
Unfortunately, the executives who run Disney Plus, they want as much content as possible.
Well, that's why I said you put someone in charge.
Yeah. The more brand name it has on it, the better they think it is, because they want to juice their subscription numbers. But maybe, quality will win out over quantity. I mean, so here's the question: are we really agreeing with Iger or not on this?
I am and I am not. I think the idea of relying on sequels is stupid, unless it's warranted and you've got a really good story to tell. Because if you don't do a sequel just to do a sequel. Hey, this was successful, so we're immediately going to greenlight part 2, but it's not necessary.
I don't really think the world is crying out for Frozen 3.
No, nobody is.
Some of the other things he's talking
Mona
about.
2. Nobody cares.
Well, you see, Moana 2 again. I mean, this illustrates Iger. That was developed as a TV series.
Right.
And he's turned around and he said, no, I want a movie.
Right.
So they're recutting what they've done into a movie.
Right, which is terrible.
Well, yeah, Iger seems to be living in the past where he thinks everyone comes to the movie theatre. I think part of Marvel's problem is that post-pandemic, people just don't go to the movie theatres like they did.
No, I agree with you. It's changed.
They do, they do for the big stuff that really gets the zeitgeist, Barbie being a very good example. Yeah, that really captures people's imagination. They turn out to the theatres for it.
Well, but did they?
You can't.
I don't think they did for Barbie. If Barbie would have been released in a vacuum, I don't think it would have done a quarter of the business that it did. What happened with Barbie and Oppenheimer was one of those, because the same thing with that movie too. People was not going to go to the movie theaters to see this. What happened was you had these 2 polar opposite movies come out the same weekend, and this thing on social media blew up that we're going to go see both of these movies. That's why they were successful, not because of the quality of the movie, although I still haven't seen Oppenheimer, but Barbie was pretty good. I would not have ever gone to the theater to see it. But it became a cultural thing to go see both of these movies back to back.
Well, so I understand that's the narrative.
That's more than the narrative. I saw so much on social media, dude. It's not just a narrative.
Yeah, but that's anecdata. That's not real. I would be interested if somebody did a study to find out how many people were actually motivated by Barbenheimer to go and see either of those movies. I don't know whether they've actually got the statistics to prove that, or whether it's
that's my point. It became a thing. That's why people were going to see both.
Well, yeah,
of them.
but you're saying that you think that we don't have any evidence of that apart.
No,
from
I said I think.
Yeah,
you missed that part of it. That's what I think happened. I don't think anybody wanted to go see either one of these movies in the numbers that they drew, but they did because of this cultural thing that happened. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I think that cultural thing that happened was a really cool thing. I think that was fun. It was
I think
neat.
It's cool too.
Yeah. It's not a negative, but let's not pretend that Barbie was going to break box office records on her own. I don't think she would have.
I think that's where you need the data to see. But going back to the wider point, I just don't think these big budget Marvel movies, particularly with the drop in quality, have the cinematic draw they used to have.
Oh, I agree.
I think they kind of topped themselves out with the Thanos saga.
Yep.
And after that, people have gone, okay, well, that's as good as it's going to get. Anything else is going to be not as good, and they don't turn out to see the movies. Particularly with the pandemic effect of less people want to go to the movie theater.
But then again,
and then we got
the outlier of the Spider-Verse, which the second one was huge in the theaters. I mean, it was massive.
Yeah,
it's a cartoon. And everyone completely accepted this is a different Spider-Man. It's not connected to the other ones at all.
But that goes to show that you can draw people out for good quality.
That's what it is, right
what
there.
you can't do is keep churning out hundreds and hundreds of movies, or tens of movies. All right, let's put it in the right magnitude. Tens and tens of movies that are generally quite mediocre, and expect all of them to break $1 billion. That's and they're budgeted in a way that it requires them to make $1 billion to break even.
Yeah.
And that's just ridiculous. And I think we've seen. I mean, I've mentioned this movie before, but Godzilla -1, which was a fabulous movie, by far the best MonsterVerse movie. Well, it's not really MonsterVerse, but by far the best kaiju movie I've seen in a long time. And it was produced for a fraction of a Marvel budget.
Yep.
Right? And it did not have crappy looking special effects in it. You did not look at the monster wrecking Tokyo and think, well, that looks a bit fake. Yeah? Because they spent their money wisely.
Yep.
Very, very judicious.
And that's what Marvel used to do when Kevin Feige was only in charge of the MCU.
I think what they need to do is they need to put a budget cap on these movies.
Yeah.
And they need to say you need to figure out how to deliver them for well under $100 million.
Yep.
Right? And that way, if they are then good quality, yeah, then they're going to make enough money to make the studio a profit. But if you budgeted it at over 200 million plus promotion, but pushes you up to 350 million, which means the thing's got to make $1 billion just to break even. Well, that's just bad business, and that's nothing to do with TV or movie or whatever. It's just, turning out mediocre, expensive product. And I think that's really the nub of the MCU problem at the moment.
Did you see that Christopher Nolan said casting Robert Downey Jr. was a historical moment in movie business?
But can you imagine them doing something like that today? Because, we all forget, right, Robert Downey Jr., everyone thought his career was over. They thought he'd imploded his own career.
He pretty much had.
Yeah, but basically he did the same thing that, what's his name, the guy plays The Flash has done.
Yeah.
Basically had drunk himself into drunk and drugged himself into a situation where nobody would employ him because he wasn't reliable. That people knew he could deliver great performances, but they couldn't rely on him to even turn up to set.
Yep.
Right? And he was hard to work with, and he demanded too much money for what it was. You know what? And yet he was regarded as a risk. And yet the MCU, Kevin Feige said, this is the guy we want to play Tony Stark. And it was perfect casting.
John Favreau actually was the one that pushed it.
Right. Yeah, well, between the pair of them, and let's face it, John Favreau and Robert Downey Jr. clearly have an extremely good relationship.
Well, because of this.
Because of this, yeah. But the thing is that that wouldn't happen today. Because the suits would not. The suits would go, what? With $350 million we're spending on this, and you want to hire a washed up has-been? No.
Yep.
And it wouldn't happen.
Yeah. And it was that casting is what made the MCU. More than anything else.
Well, yeah.
You like Iron Man because of him.
Not only that, the same guy is the guy who beats Thanos.
Yes.
Right? The guy right from that crappy third-rate hero at the beginning becomes the guy who effectively leads the MCU and kills Thanos, sacrifices himself doing it, and leaves a whole massive hole in it, in the entire thing. Not Captain America, not Thor. Yeah.
Not Hulk. Not Doctor Strange. It wasn't magic. Yeah, it wasn't Captain Marvel.
It was. And let's face it, when we say Tony Stark, we're talking about Robert Downey Jr.
Yep.
Yeah, because just in the same way that in that first movie at the end he goes, "I am Iron Man." Yeah, Robert Downey Jr. is Tony Stark.
Yeah.
And I say that he's Tony Stark, not Iron Man, because it's a performance of Tony Stark that delivers what that gives you.
100%.
Because let's face it, when he's Iron Man, that's CGI and him with his face in a glass box.
Yep.
Right. But it's when he's delivering those lines as Iron Man, yeah, that's just moving the action along, and the action is CGI. But it's his performance as Tony Stark that makes the character.
Yes, and it's the performance of Tony Stark that you believe what Iron Man's doing with his voice and talking and stuff as Iron Man.
And here's the thing: we need to get back to the non-superhero part of these characters.
100%.
The reason we want to come and see them.
Yep.
Yeah, and that really is what we've lost, because now they are just.
This is why Daredevil on Netflix works so well, all 3 seasons. This is why that season of The Punisher worked so well. This is why Jessica Jones worked so well. It was the civilian, if you will, not the superhero. We cared about these people, Before we get to our... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, slightly, it is a parallel to the DC side, because in the DC side...
They've never focused on the...
Nobody really cares. And Bruce Wayne is the deepest one, and nobody really cares about Bruce Wayne either.
No.
They care about how much of Batman is Bruce Wayne.
Yes, exactly.
And it's... Whereas the Marvel characters have always been about the person behind the mask, not the person in front of the mask.
Well, with Batman's a good example, though. It's not that Bruce Wayne is Batman, it's that Batman is Bruce Wayne.
Exactly.
Yeah. You spent a lot of money on a Atari thing.
I didn't pay full price for this.
Well, I hope not. Because
you know what?
Yeah. So this is the Atari Couchcade.
Couchcade. This is from Arcade 1UP, who are the guys who do those shrunken arcade cabinets that you can buy in Walmart.
But these are all the games that you have to use a spinner or a rollerball to play.
This is what attracted me to this. So what this is, the Couchcade, as its name suggests, is designed to be used on a couch. It is effectively a little arcade emulator that plugs into via HDMI to your TV, and then it then comes with a wireless controller, and the wireless controller even has a cushion on the bottom for putting on your lap. The wireless controller is round about the width of a small arcade cabinet, and it has the 5 arcade buttons, but it also has a trackball and a spinner. And this is the Atari. I think they do a different version of this, but this is the Atari version. So it comes with 10 Atari arcade games, and they are mostly games that capitalise on the particular controls. And what attracted me to this is because you can get these games, emulate them all you want, but they're really the same without the controllers. So you get Asteroids and Asteroids Deluxe. Okay, fine. You can use those with buttons. But you get Centipede and Millipede, which both use a trackball on the original arcade cabinet. And they're much better with a trackball than they are, because the idea behind those games is you swivel. You've got a small playfield of the bomb, but you can really move quickly around that because you can spin the trackball. Missile Command, again, came with a trackball. Doesn't really play in the same way moving a joystick. You need to be able to rapidly get to parts of the screen. Tempest, where you use the spinner to move around the outside of the tube. You can play it with buttons, it's just not the same.
Yeah.
Just not the same, yeah. Then we've got some smaller ones. Major Havoc, written and created by our friend of the show, Owen Rubin. A Lunar Lander, which, so that had the original arcade thing of that had a big throttle controller on it. They don't reproduce that here, it's just buttons. So Crystal Castles, which is kind of like a 3D Pac-Man style game.
Yep.
I remember it being quite big in the arcades. I never really played it, but that also played with a trackball. And then Gravitar, which is actually one of my favourite games ever. Doesn't need special controls for it, it's just a button game. It's a bit like a mix of Asteroids and Scramble, maybe. You kind of use Asteroids controls to move around, but then when you get near these planets, then, as the name implies, they're subject to gravity, and you have to be able to do stuff in a gravity field using a thruster.
And this thing is wireless too.
Yeah, it's wireless. It's wireless to the box. So the idea is you sit on the couch, you plug it into your TV, turn it on, and then you've got these 10 arcade games with the original controllers.
Now, a lot of these are very twitchy, especially like Tempest and Missile Command. Is there any kind of a delay or?
So the trackball is not fantastic. It's certainly nowhere near as good as the original arcade game.
Yeah, of course.
And I suspect that is a wireless lag problem.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about.
Tempest is no problem. It feels like you're directly connected to the spinner, so Tempest is fine. As I said, I've played it. I've only had time to play it a little bit, but the trackball, certainly the first time I played it, I thought, oh, this is not great, and then it seemed to get a bit better. So I suspect there might be a kind of a Bluetooth interference thing going on here. one of the downsides of this, unfortunately, is that the company makes it Arcade 1-Up and don't seem to have updated it at all since it came out.
A couple years ago.
3
years ago.
Yeah, well,
2021.
Yeah.
So how much did you pay for this? Because online it retailed for $179.
Yeah, I wouldn't have paid that. I think I paid about £80 for it. So maybe
that's not too bad. Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, people was. I mean, here it sells for about 150, 160 new, if you can find it, pounds, and I wouldn't have paid that for it. So I thought.
Did you get the travel bag?
It all comes. It actually, that is just the bottom of the cushion. It's not actually a bag.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So and you can take the cushion off if you want to play it on the desk. But it is something I admire the fact they're doing something a bit different, and it does really seem to be well thought out, even if it's not necessarily perfectly executed. Look, one of the problems with Arcade 1-Up is that anybody who's played the full side arcades know that they're built to a price.
Yes.
And that sometimes affects the quality. And obviously, you remember the original arcade games. And they were built to be very, very reactive, and so the quality of the controls in all of Arcade 1-Up's stuff sometimes takes a bit of a beating. I don't get me wrong. I think it would have been great if they'd have included a wire for this as well, so you would get no lag. That would have been perfect. But obviously, it doesn't really fit with the concept they had of, you sat on the couch,
right?
And also as well, it's. Because it's effectively sat in your lap, it's very much designed to allow you to play two players. So you just swap the control deck over between different people.
So thumbs up or thumbs down?
I would say thumbs up, but not as good as I hoped it would be.
Yeah.
I'm certainly not disappointed with it. I'm pleased with it, and I love all of these games, except for maybe Crystal Castles, which I've never really played. But I love all the rest of them. So. It's nice. The emulation is really good. So it's nice to play the actual. And so many times nowadays, you buy these retro things, and they're not the original arcade games. They are ports. They're the NES versions or the Master Systems, the Mega Drive versions, or something like that. This is the actual arcade game. So I applaud them for that. For me, it's 50 years of Atari this year. I thought I love these games. It would be a nice little thing to have, and I'm pleased with it. But I wish it could have been a little bit better.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the case with a lot of technology nowadays. Let's wrap up this show with our competition that we've got, our comic book movie competition. We're down to 4 movies, and we got to figure out which 2 are going to battle it out on the next episode, David. So our first one is Captain America: The Winter Soldier against 1989's Batman, of course, the one with Michael Keaton and Tim Burton and Jack Nicholson. All-star cast, really. But you can say the same thing with Captain America now. When that movie came out, it really wasn't an all-star cast, but it kind of was. I mean, Robert Redford's in that movie, for God's sakes. Robert Redford is the big bad.
Yeah.
Kind of.
I've given this a little bit of thought, and ultimately I came to the conclusion that much as I love Tim Burton's Batman, and we waxed at length about how great that movie was the last time we considered it in a bracket competition, the problem it faces is that somebody came along years later and they did Batman better.
They did Batman a lot better.
Yeah, and I think for that reason it can't possibly win against Captain America, which Captain America is... The Winter Soldier is, as we said before, an amazing film. If you took
Captain America out of it, seriously, if you took Captain America out of it, and everything remains the same, there's this big government organization that's supposedly targeting terrorists, and they have these big flying ships, and this guy is like, this isn't going to fly. You get a lot of the same movie without Captain America. You really do.
Yeah, but that's what's great about it to me, is that they actually layer. Because remember, this came out. It was after the Avengers, but this was the first post Avengers Captain America story.
Yeah,
and they layer who Captain America is and his backstory over that already very good thriller.
Does he even wear his mask in this? I don't think he does. I can't remember any scenes with him wearing his mask.
I think the climactic scene where he's putting the chips into the battle carriers to bring them down or change the targeting.
I don't think so.
He is. He's fully suited up, and he goes and steals his original suit from the museum.
Yes, that's right.
Because he doesn't have access to his actual suit.
Which, by the way, the museum suit is way better than the one he wore. I hated Captain America's suit in the Avengers. I thought it was awful. The one from the first Avenger was way better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think we're both on the same thing here.
I think Captain America wins this just because Christopher Nolan just redid Batman, and really that is the iconic Batman. As wonderful as Michael Keaton is, and as great as the Tim Burton legacy was when he started that off, and I don't want to dismiss it, but we're really coming down to the best of the best here, and I think I'd give it to Captain America because of
it's a better movie.
Batman. Yeah,
you could pick this movie up at any point and just sit there and just excuse the pun, marvel at how good it is. Yeah. The acting, the chemistry between characters, the Falcon and Cap. I mean,
yeah, and this was delivered to us by the Russo brothers, who went on to do the Infinity War saga.
Yeah, this is where they
absolutely
they nailed it.
Yeah, absolutely nailed it.
And it's a mini Avengers movie. I mean, Black Widow's in it, the Falcon's in it. Yep. I mean, and let's be honest, up until this movie, no one really cared about Black Widow. Not really. This movie gave her character. It gave her a personality. It's really well done. Yeah, because
before that she was just kind of generic spy.
Yes,
and
badass generic spy. Yeah. I mean, look, her intro into what was it, Iron Man 2? Oh, she had that red hair. It was so bad looking. You didn't really buy that she was a super badass. You did when the Avengers came out. That scene where she's tied up in the chair and she gets the phone call. Iconic scene. It's so good. And she completely mops the floor with these guys who supposedly have her, in their grasp.
Yeah.
But her fear when she goes to meet Bruce Banner, you completely buy it. But it's this movie that her personality really comes out. And it's because of this movie that you care she dies. In, what's the last one? Not Infinity War, Endgame. She dies in that movie and you care because of this movie. This is the movie that gave her that scene. Our next one, so we both agree Captain America moves on. Yeah. No question. This one I think is pretty easy too. The reboot, or the first movie of the X-Men, which has problems, don't get me wrong, and it doesn't really hold up today as it did then, against 2018's Venom, which we both agree for what it is. I mean, it was a really difficult job that Sony had to do to divorce Venom from Spider-Man. So here's this bad guy who's kind of an anti-hero in these movies that has no connection to Spider-Man, but for some reason looks just freaking like Spider-Man. And Tom Hardy makes the movie. Without him, it's a complete flop.
But here's the thing for me: we are making excuses for how good this movie exceeded our expectations, right? That is not a winning movie.
No.
You say, well, despite all of the things it had against it, it kind of turned out pretty good. Yeah, that is not the sort of movie that can win a bracket at this level.
No, not at this level. Not against one of the most iconic movies in the superhero universe.
Much as I said, I don't particularly care for the 2000 X-Men movie that much. It's to me, it's a better movie than Venom is, even though I enjoy Venom, and I probably enjoy Venom more than I enjoy X-Men 2000. I would have to go with X-Men on this one.
Well, then I don't know if we even need to really bother to wait to another episode to go to the championship. So let's do it right now. We've got Captain America, the Winter Soldier against the X-Men 2000. And as much as I still like the X-Men, I really do. I actually watched part of this movie after our last time we talked about it. There's some stuff that really holds up. And we cannot discount the fact that Sir Ian Kellen is such a good actor. And he's such a good bad guy. He really is. The plot is kind of stupid. He's going to steal this character and use her to amplify his powers to do this, and he's going to make everybody mutants. It's kind of stupid. And the climactic scene is just bad. But this is where Hugh Jackman's Wolverine comes in. And is there a better casting than Hugh Jackman as Wolverine?
And let's face it, every scene that Hugh Jackman is on the screen as Wolverine is amazing, even when he's surrounded by terrible, terrible performances.
Yes.
Such as that from Halle Berry as Storm, which has to go down.
Is one of the worst.
Well, let's face it, Halle Berry is 2 for 2 because she also was the lead in Catwoman, which was also awful. And I think she's just not suited. I'm not going to say she's a bad actress. The woman has won Oscars.
No, she is really good. There's no question about that.
But she can't do superhero.
No, she
just doesn't.
She doesn't
get it.
Well, maybe she can. She just hasn't had any good roles.
Well, maybe. But,
it just didn't work here.
She's just appalling in this.
She is.
And some of the other guys are okay. I told you I didn't like James
Marsden.
Yes. In this either. And
Jean Grey. Jean Grey doesn't really work that good.
Famke Janssen doesn't work because she's too old. It's got its problems, and as you say, the plot is weak. I think a lot of the action sequences don't work too well.
What's a better casting? Because let's be honest, you and I can't imagine anybody else as Captain America. Not really. Not that version of Captain America as Chris Evans. Chris Evans, look, he had some decent roles before he was Johnny Storm in the Fantastic Four, terrible movie. But you completely buy him as Captain America, as Steve Rogers, a man out of time. Who's a better casting, him or Hugh Jackman as Wolverine? I got to say Wolverine.
Yeah,
he's done it a lot. I mean, he's going to do this next movie, and it's 34 years now. Well,
no, 24 years.
24 years.
This was 2000, so this is 20, and he's filmed it already. So look, don't get me wrong, but I think, to be honest with you, I think in what year was the first Captain America movie?
2016.
Was it that recent?
Yeah.
Anyway, whenever it was, if 20 years after that they asked Chris Evans to reprise the role of Captain America, A, I think he'd do it, and B, I think he'd do it incredibly well, even with the age.
I agree.
Yeah. Hugh Jackman has basically done the same thing. It's like, he when he's doing Wolverine, unless he's playing Wolverine as an older guy, which he did do.
Look, Logan is a brilliant movie.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is that having done that, showing a beat up old Logan who's near the end of his life, he's now gone back, and he's not going to be like that in Deadpool 3. I guarantee you.
No.
And the fact that this guy as an actor can do the work to convincingly portray
Hugh Jackman is nothing like Wolverine.
No, he's a lovey. He's a song and dance guy.
Yeah.
That's his first love.
Yes.
Yeah.
And here he is doing Wolverine.
Yeah.
I mean, when they cast him, everybody was like, "Really? Hugh Jackman? Are you kidding me?"
The Greatest Showman. That's his real, much more his persona.
100%.
But the thing is I have
although
to say
he was good in Real Steel.
Yeah. I haven't seen that one. That's the boxing robot.
Yeah, it's way better than you think it is, dude.
Right, I'm sure it is. I'll take your word on it.
No, you should watch it.
But I will do. But but Chris Evans as well. I mean, you talked about the fact he played Johnny Storm.
Yeah.
Right? You put those two performances side by side. You would think they're not the same person.
Yeah.
In fact, I remember seeing Chris Evans in what's the one with the
Knives Out?
Where when they're in the future and they're on the rail on the train.
Oh yeah, Snowpiercer.
Snowpiercer. Now, I watched the whole of Snowpiercer, right, and and I thought the performance of the lead actor in it was brilliant, but I didn't realise it was Chris Evans. I mean, he had a beard on, but nevertheless, I mean, the guy is he's like a chameleon. He really is. And I would, having watched that terrible Fantastic Four pair of movies, I would not have put the guy who played Johnny Storm as capable of doing that.
No.
And yet, absolutely, he does. And, he really... But I think that the thing for both of them is that both Hugh Jackman and Chris Evans are able to make you believe these ridiculously characters are real people.
But they've made these ridiculous characters iconic.
They're real, yeah.
Yeah. I think Captain America, the Winter Soldier, would have a hard time against Logan. I don't think it has a hard time against the ensemble X-Men.
No,
so
I agree. I think great as the X-Men was, as I say, I don't really like it that much, but it has far too many flaws for it to be able to be.
It does.
The Winter Soldier, which is pretty much a perfect movie.
I think that when it comes to superhero movies, it's one of the very best. Is it the best? I don't know. It's the best in season 1 of our bracket. We'll start another one the next time, and we're going to do at least 3 more of these so we can kind of get to, and maybe they're not all movies.
Yeah.
But we're going to go and try to crown our ultimate champion, and Captain America the Winter Soldier is going to be in that bracket because it has won season 1, David. It defeated Aquaman, Deadpool, which was not easy because we both loved Deadpool.
Yeah.
It beat Batman and it beat X-Men 2000. So
I tell you, as this goes on, it's going to get harder and harder because it's going to be choose your favorite child situation.
I know
really,
it's going to be difficult when we get to the Contest of Champions, if you will, which is an old Marvel series, comic series. It'll be interesting. It will definitely be interesting. So, David, I'm going to wrap this show up now. We would love to get feedback from you guys. It's the show at GeeksPubPodcast.com. You can always follow us on Facebook, but it's under our sister show, which is Tech Fan, which David and I will be doing next week. David, I will see you then.
See you then.